So we're given function g, and we want to find the derivative of the inverse of g at x equals 3. So in general, the formula that we're going to be using is 1 over g prime of g inverse of x. In this case, x is 3, so we're going to plug that in. So you get 1 over g prime of g inverse of 3. So we're always going to start inside. So inside, we have to figure out what the inverse g of 3 is, x equals 3. So that's a fancy way of saying, well, what x value is going to give me g of x equals 3? So in this case, we have, well, the first one here. G of 7 is equal to 3. So if g of 7 is equal to 3, that means g inverse of 3 is equal to 7. Okay, so now we're going to replace g inverse with 7. And all that's left to do is to evaluate g prime of 7, which we have over here. G prime of 7 is 3/4. So that would just be 1 over 3 over 4, which is 4/3. So our final answer is D. Okay, moving on. We're given f of x is 3x to the 4th plus x. G is the inverse function of f, and we have to evaluate g prime of 2. So that's another way of saying take the derivative of the inverse of f at x equals 2, which we know is 1 over f prime of f inverse of 2. We're always going to start inside, so that's f inverse of 2. Another way of saying, well, what value of x is going to give me f of x equal to 2? Unlike last problem, I don't have that information, so I need to come up with it. I know that f of x is 3x to the 4th plus x, and so we're going to set that equal to 2. So we're going to bring the 2 over and factor, so we do end up having x minus 1 times 3x cubed minus 3x squared plus 3x minus 2. Okay, and that's going to equal to 0. So x is 1 and approximately 0.79594. So we get 2 answers from this. So it turns out only one of them is going to work. And I'm sure you can figure out which one that is. And actually this should be positive. So this should be -1. So let's try x equals -1. Okay, so we'll have 1 over f prime evaluated at -1, right? Because what we just found was f inverse of 2. We got 2 answers. It's either -1 or 0.79594. Okay. So now we want to find f prime of -1. I don't know what that is, so let's find the derivative. The derivative is 12x cubed plus 1. If I plug in -1 in for x, I get -11. So substitute that in. It's 1 over -11, or -1 over 11. So the answer choice is B. Okay, last one. We're given that f of x is x to the 5th plus 1. And we want to let g be the inverse function of f. What is the value of g prime of 0? So that's another way of saying, what's the derivative of inverse of f at x equals 0, which is 1 over f prime of f inverse of 0. We're going to start inside here. F inverse of 0 is the same thing as saying, well, what x value is going to give me f of x equal to 0, well, f of x is x to the 5th plus 1. We're going to set that equal to 0 and get that x is negative 1. Okay, so we're going to have 1 over f prime of negative 1. I want to find what f prime is first. So f prime is 5x to the 4th. If I plug in negative 1 here, it will be negative 1 to the 4th power, which is just 1. So the answer is 5. So 1 over f prime of negative 1 is 1/5. And that's our answer.